Back in the 70s, perhaps the most influential book of the last part of the 20th century written about technology was Future Shock, written by Alvin Toffler. Now, we're in the 21st century, we have a new book, Present Shock by Douglas Rushkoff. Douglas, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Hey, good to be with you.
Now, you're a troublemaker, aren't you, Douglas?
I try.
What is present shock? You said in the 20th century, we were perhaps imprisoned by the future. Today we're imprisoned by the present.
Yeah, I mean, the end of the 20th century was so forward-leaning. Everyone was thinking about the next big thing and the long boom and what's coming. And when 2000 finally arrived and the planes didn't fall out of the sky and the Y2K bug didn't, take our children away, whatever it was supposed to do, I feel like we kind of shifted from that leaning forward of the end of the industrial age to a kind of a stillness, almost a, well, what are my stocks actually worth? What is my life actually about? And that it was a tide shift of sorts. And now we're here. It was both the end of one millennium and entering into really the digital media environment.
Douglas, you're on TechCrunch. I mean, these are the guys who built the present. Did it happen because of technology, or is technology a consequence of something else deeply rooted in our culture?
I mean, it goes back and forth. I mean, I'd say technology is deeply rooted in being human. What human beings do is we build technologies in order to give ourselves more choices. We have fire so we can choose to live in the cold, electric light so we can choose to stay up at night. And when we got digital technology, as I first experienced it in the 70s and 80s, and Toffler saw it all coming in the acceleration and all, when I first experienced digital technology, I experienced it as if it was going to be finally liberate us from the kind of the oppressive temporal landscape of the industrial age. Instead of having to clock in and go to work and make progress and make more, we were going to be able to move into that world when we all talked about we're going to be at home and work in our underwear, making things for friends, doing things in a P2P network and have fun. And when a lot of these guys actually got hold of it, certainly when Wired magazine got hold of it, instead of the good old slackers at Mondo 2000, it became about somehow saving the NASDAQ stock exchange, finding a new way for capital to grow, and the possibilities for digital technology to take us out of that kind of schedule really weren't realized. And we decided instead to really amplify the agenda of central currency and capitalism through technology rather than get out from under it.
So Douglas, your book has had a great impact because you're perhaps the first person to actually write a whole book about what it is to live in the present. Explain it. What does it actually mean? Does it mean we're on Facebook and Twitter all the time?
I mean, in some ways, yeah. There's that present. There's the present of tweets and pings and all that stuff, which isn't really the present. It's just this sort of
real time.
Yeah, that real-time always-onness is actually chasing you. The real time is you and me sitting in a room together, actually being human beings. But there is this sort of assault of devices and things that we think we need to catch up with. But it's also digital time is intrinsically has less momentum to it. If you think about the sweep second hand on a clock sort of moving through a minute, there's a sense of motion. You're at the beginning of a minute, the middle of a minute, the end of a minute, and a minute is a portion of an hour, which is a portion of a day. And it's how we look at analog clock. It's an analog of our day. Digital time, I remember when my father replaced my analog clock radio with a digital one, and it just sits there poised in a moment. It's 9:01. Bam, it's 9:02, bam, it's 9:03. You're actually in these discrete moments. A minute in the digital reality is an absolute duration. It's no longer experienced as some section of something. It's an internally generated pulse of a minute.
So what does this mean? In your book, you argue, for example, that it means the end of something you call narrative. Have stories finished? Is it the end of history?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's certainly the end of history and narrative and beginnings and middles and ends as the dominant cultural paradigm. Right? We can still have stories, we can still watch our Game of Thrones, we can still care about what happens at the end of The Simpsons, but none of these things are primarily about that. The Simpsons is actually about making connections with other media. Game of Thrones is more like a fantasy role-playing game that we're trying to experience it as a never-ending story rather than as something that's going to conclude. Politics is less about campaigns and these long drive movements towards ends that justify the means than much more like something like Occupy, where you try to actually, in real time, make something different. So and the easy way to say it is, a narrative is over and we end up with this kind of presentist thing. But really what it is narrative is no longer the sort of the dominant way of organizing experience. We're much less goal-oriented. We don't make investments in the future. We try to make money on the trade. It's like things happen now or they're not happening at all.
How do we stay sane in this age? There's an element of insanity, I think, certainly in our age, and you point to it in the book.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy, right?
It is crazy.
I mean, living perpetually in the present.
If you can go into present shock if you're in the present, or you could be some Tao Zen master who's actually here and now, and we're going to alternate between those two. This is the beginning of a very new way of moving through time. I mean, one way is, what I've always argued, program or be programmed, right? Learn to use your devices and your technologies as the master, with autonomy, with agency, rather than passively. So if you're experiencing the temporal collapse, say, of some friend from second grade trying to friend you on Facebook, who you'd rather not come into your present, meanwhile, you've got ads from Facebook's data mined future coming to you about, they know if your kid's going to be pregnant before you do and what you're going to want if you're going to be gay. Rather, you can extricate yourself from those situations or choose not to listen to the advice from the future or befriend from the past. The other totally easy one is just to connect sometimes, not all the time, but a moment a day with what's actually going on in the world.
So, Douglas, you're a prophet of the present as opposed to a prophet of the future. You've got an audience of entrepreneurs. What sorts of products would you like them to be producing for our age of presentism?
Well, I'll tell them not only what I would like them to be...
Look at the camera. Look them in the eye.
Not only what I'd like them to be producing, but what they would actually profit from is if they understand that we've moved from this sort of industrial age model to a present-based model. It means we're moving from money as a storage medium that gets interest over time to money as a transactional medium, right? So we're moving money itself, finance itself is going kind of from the hard drive into RAM, from long-term storage and growth into real-time circulation and activity. I would start looking for businesses that take advantage of a new steady-state real-time economy. That means getting into things, yes, like currency, like banking, like transaction, like authentication. How can you, if you see Etsy as the beginning of our liberation from this sort of whole top-down Walmart, awful giant supply chain, global economy, back to something that feels real and value-creating, what do those people need to actually get off the current banking grid, the time is money, debt-based, bank-based VC economy? What tools do they need? And then when you see what those tools are, alternative currencies, which even Alan Greenspan in his final testimony to Congress said that's where the economy is going to get interesting, when we have currencies that are competing with big central currencies. Look at Europe, what's going on, how the euro doesn't work. When you start looking at the technologies that are going to replace the dying industrial age economy, that's where you start to do things that are disruptive. Google, Facebook, Twitter, nice companies, but they're not the first digital age companies. They are the last industrial age companies.
Is there a presentist company that really comes to mind? Have they been invented yet?
I mean, yes and no.
Etsy?
Etsy, to some extent, Etsy, although it's a presentist company, still very dependent on time-based things. I tend to look at a lot of small businesses are presentist. Businesses that have learned not to take loans so they don't need to pay them back and they don't have shareholders, like a restaurant, can be presentist if it actually has a sustainable model. Dunkin' Yo-Yos is a presentist business in that they understand that there's like a 7-year yo-yo cycle. Every 7 years, yo-yos become a fad in America. This company is poised to take advantage of the fad when it happens, send out all the yo-yo experts and do shows and do stuff, have contests, then the yo-yo craze dies, and they go back down in the ground like that little frog, that waits for water every few weeks. Businesses like that can grow and contract with their markets rather than try to force growth because they have to because of their debt structure.
Douglas, very briefly in 30 seconds, what comes after presentism?
Well, that's an interesting question. More presentism. I think, honestly...
you don't know, admit it.
No, I think temporal landscapes last for about 1,000 years. Right? We had 1,000 or so years of text creating kind of historical time and biblical time. We had about 1,000 years of the clock creating futurism and this drive towards industrial age progress. We're just at the very beginning of the present. I don't know if we really achieved true presentism as I see it. I don't know that we'd need anything else. We'd actually be in the moment and we'd be alive.
Well, on that presentist or futurist or pastist note, Douglas Rushkoff, the author of Present Shock, thank you so much for appearing on TechCrunch TV. And I will note that this was recorded. So it happened in the past.
And it's being broadcast in our future.